Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. We got a lot to dive into. You can hear from my voice that I am in still recovering from a cold. No picks today. Knock that out. I'm not ready for that. Put us back on the regular screen. We're going to roll through the program, and I appreciate all of you hanging out with us. I also appreciate the several of you that I met in Chicago who were there for my event, and it was a lot of fun. I traveled to and from Chicago yesterday. I'm wearing, if you can see it, my Chicago. Do you guys remember when it was controversial? Remember when the OK or the hit me sign turned into punch on the shoulder? Do you remember that? Turned into a huge sign of white supremacy and how everybody was losing their minds over it. That was one of the moments of utter absurdity out there. But go figure. All right. I got a lot to dive into. Right off the top, record Super Bowl viewership. Never have more people watched a television event than Super Bowl 59 between the Chiefs and the Eagles, even though the game was a blowout. Fox announced $800 million in revenue. Stock is at an all-time high, and the NFL is at an all-time high, which is frankly pretty incredible. And I don't know how much higher the NFL ceiling is, but I do think it's reflective. Adam, correct me if I'm wrong. I think 22 million, roughly, people watched the national championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame just a few weeks ago. 127 million people watched the Super Bowl. So just something for all of you out there to think about. And I'm going to share this clip eventually, and I want to hear your ideas. Why do over 100 million more people watch the Super Bowl than watch the college football national championship? And why is the Super Bowl and the NFL continuing to set record highs while college football numbers are much lower than they ever have been historically? I believe I am correct. The most watched college football game in the 21st century was USC Texas between Vince Young and Matt Leinart back in the day. In fact, just last week, Matt Leinart is a buddy of mine for a decade now. Congratulations to he and Josie on their baby girl that they just announced. But I was with Leinart at the bar, and a bunch of Texas dudes were coming up to him talking about that Rose Bowl game. I'm not sure if any college athlete has ever been asked more about a game that his team lost than Matt Leinart being asked and talked to about that USC Texas game back in the day, which was and still is the most watched college football game ever in the 21st century, 35.6 million people. So why is it that the NFL is setting all-time record highs and that there are 105 million more people that watched this year's Super Bowl than watched the national title game between Ohio State and Notre Dame? And I say this as someone who is a massive college football fan. I don't know that there's anyone in media that has a bigger audience among college football fans than me. I mean, that's the foundation of OutKick, was loving college football and feeling like college football, by and large, was undercovered on a national scale. Why is it that college football national title rankings are down around 50% from that USC Texas game? Meanwhile, the NFL keeps setting record highs. To me, a rising tide should be lifting all football boats. I love college football. I also really like the NFL. Why is the NFL continuing to surge and college football is not? I actually think it's a really super interesting question. Okay. Yesterday, I was out, didn't do Clay and Buck or OutKick the show, didn't do any Fox News telecast. Instead, I was invited to speak on a panel about gender roles and the election at the University of Chicago. I appreciate the invite. I spoke to a University of Chicago class in Milwaukee. The panel got fiery. I would encourage all of you to go read it. Go watch it. It's up on YouTube. I believe it is linked on OutKick. I know it is linked on clayandbuck.com. It's on my Twitter feed. It's about an hour and 15 minutes. Spicy at times, but I think interesting conversation that took place. We're going to share multiple clips with you. I've got 2 of them here. There are still others that I think should be out there. But the first one, I believe, is me asking the question. We were discussing, so a little bit of a background. Why did young men overwhelmingly vote for Trump? And also, why did men in general overwhelmingly vote for Trump? And why are Democrats having difficulty trying to figure out how to talk to men? Here is me. I believe this clip is me asking the question, who is the most masculine Democrat? Enjoy.
Who is the most masculine Democrat right now in America? Mayor Pete?
Is that a gay joke?
No. Mayor Pete. No. Well, no, it's just that he's not particularly masculine. Nobody's like, oh, Mayor Pete, he's a badass. Chuck Schumer? Is anybody like, hey, Chuck Schumer holding up an avocado and a beer to talk about the Super Bowl? Is anybody like that trying to grill? Is anybody like, hey, that's a dude I want to hang out with?
But Trump's like a grandpa.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
Trump took a bullet in his ear and immediately stood up and said, fight, fight, fight. Every man in America and most of the women out here were impressed by that, even if the women won't admit it. She's shaking her head strong.
All right. I don't know who the answer is. Maybe Fetterman, senator from Pennsylvania, is the best answer. But I think if you run across the litany of the Democrat Party, what you run into, some of you are saying, hey, the most masculine Democrat's actually a woman, Michelle Obama or Amy Klobuchar or Gretchen Whitmer. I mean, in the comments. But I think if that's true, it speaks to a major issue that the Democrat Party has, which is they don't know how to talk to men. And I think one of the primary reasons they have connecting with men is because it is a female-dominated party and it is an identity politics-dominated party. Now, they know they have the issue. The problem is Tim Walz was their answer. And Tim Walz, I told you this from the get-go, Minnesota governor, walking around in a camouflage cap, claiming that he likes to go out and hunt, high school football coach. Remember, they called him Coach Walz. They didn't even call him Governor Walz. They know that they have the issue. The problem they have is they don't know how to fix or address their issue. And so I think the challenge that is embodied out there is right now Trump has a 60% approval in the CBS poll for men that came out on Monday. On top of that, Trump also, I guess it was Sunday it came out, Trump also has a plus 10 rating among voters under 30. And significantly, the biggest group swinging in his direction from 2020 to 2024 was young men, which swung about 27 points. The 2 groups that voted most for Trump in America were men over 65 and young men 18 to 24. That's pretty remarkable according to some of the data that's out there. So why are young men moving towards Trump? I think it is so indicative here is they're angry. They're angry over the lies that they have been told, in particular COVID, which I think is a lingering wound and a lingering anger that it impacts many young boys and girls out there who were kids when they went through COVID. And I believe we have that clip as well. Do we have that clip to be able to play? This is why are young men moving in the direction of Trump? I think it has something to do with COVID and the era they just lived through the discussion, why did I go to the University of Chicago? My goal for 2025 is to try to go and talk to people who may not agree with me. And I would encourage you to go watch the full process here, to go watch all of the show and all of the discussion. And I want to be doing that as frequently as I possibly can because I want to try to convince people of the rightness of my argument. But also, even if they disagree, a lot of these kids on college campuses are not seeing very much of, quote unquote, the entire spectrum of arguments. They're living in a left-wing echo chamber. And to the extent you live in a right-wing echo chamber, I don't think that's healthy. It's why I read the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post every day, because I want to make sure I'm seeing, as well as being on social media all day and reading and consuming and watching as much different content as I possibly can. I want to make sure that I have the ability to challenge my brain and my thought processes as often as I possibly can, so that if there is some argument that I haven't concerned, or has an argument that is better than the one that I have concerned or considered, that I'm open to changing my mind. And so I'm not sure how many college kids are open to having their minds changed or want to have their worldview challenged. But I do think, in general, that's the entire purpose of education itself, is to challenge existing mindset. And so I'm going to do my best to try to accept as many different invitations to speak on college campuses in particular as I can. Now, I speak all over the place. I speak to people of all different backgrounds. I mean, I'm not sure that anybody on a daily basis, frankly, speaks to more people than I do in media. If you consider Clay and Buck, if you consider Fox News, if you consider OutKick, I think there's an argument to be made, and then social media and clips like that, all those other things. I think there's an argument to be made that every single day I'm a person who speaks to more people in media, certainly in live context, than any media figure in the country. I don't think that's crazy an argument to make. But the process is still kind of underway, and we'll see how many guest spots and opportunities I get to speak, but I'm not going to tiptoe up. So I would encourage you to all go watch that, and you can listen to it. It's up on YouTube. A lot of people watching the clips. We're going to continue to show those. Again, the concept talking about it was the University of Chicago, gender roles, and the election. A couple of other things that I want to hit here. I also did the Piers Morgan show. That should be up soon. I think you guys are going to enjoy that discussion. It was me, Ronna McDaniel, Jeffrey Toobin, Roland Martin. Got a little bit spicy on that as well. I'm not sure if that's up yet, but Piers does a great show. So I've already done that as well today. Couple of other things that I want to hit. You can probably hear my voice not 100% perfect. The Department of Education has reversed the Title IX guidelines that were put out by the White House right before Joe Biden left, saying that Title IX is going to be applied to NIL, which set all of college athletics into an absolute uproar. It's going to eventually end up in court. All of this is going to be debated, discussed ad nauseum for years to come. But it's why I believe ultimately we're going to have to see football and maybe men's basketball as well broken off from the other athletic pursuits, because if NIL money has to be spent evenly, then there is no basis under which most athletic departments can work. I'll be honest with you. I don't want the money that I donate going equally to the men's and women's athletic department at the University of Tennessee for NIL, because NIL is a market-based reality. Football players and men's basketball players, by and large, have a substantial value over and above the scholarship. Most women's athletic scholarships are more than the value that the actual athlete brings from an economic perspective. So if you suddenly have to give a quarterback and a track athlete in women's athletics similar dollars, then the entire NIL system breaks, because NIL is a market-based driven perspective, and this is just not going to be a reality. So I think it's going to be significant. Again, that data is out there. Tomorrow, I'm going to dive into why I think criticizing Elon Musk for Doge-related aspects of his job right now is absolutely insane. I think there is no underlying basis in reality for it at all. And so I am going to talk about that tomorrow. But right now, my nose is running. I've got a cold. I'm going to go blow my nose. I'll be on hot mic a little bit later, and then I'm going to try to rest my voice. I'm going to have some tea, and I'm going to try to be back 100% tomorrow. Appreciate all of you. DBAP unless you need SBAP. If you're a college and you're watching this right now, and it fits my schedule, I would love to come speak to as big of an audience as you can provide for me and say exactly what I think. That's one of my goals for 2025, is to get out and try to persuade people. Appreciate the University of Chicago having me, all the other panelists, everybody else, even though many of them clearly were a bit outraged by some of my opinions. We'll have more clips on that show for tomorrow. Interested in your opinion, and I'll share it. Why has the college football audience national championship collapsed while nowhere else has? All that and more, and I will break all that down for you. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. This has been OutKick, the show.